Good morning. It's day 34. I cannot even believe it. I'm coming to a different spot today, so I don't know if we'll have as clear a picture or view of sunrise, but I'll show you. I got a little rabbit there. Look at that. Little rabbit. Oh, and a little water out there. I'm so blessed to live close to water. You know, I have to check myself on that sometimes because I'm like, oh, but that's not enough. I need more. I need a house like on the water, even though I have that. Like, it needs to be. Anyway, do you find yourself like not being satisfied with what you have? And I'm in this little hut. I've never done this before. Here, I'll show you some of the birds. All the birds that are happy. I am sending prayers to those of you up in the Midwest that are getting hit with ice as we speak, I think. I know my husband was making sure the generator was working and that we're even lucky enough to even have such a thing. So anyway, enough about that. So the words that came to me very clearly this morning were settle down. And I was continuing to read in Joshua. Boy, you got to like buckle up before you open that book. It'll take you some places and throw you around and, you know, you might fall over. But and I had to take just a little bite-sized piece because I needed to settle down. Like, it's just too much. It's a lot. And nestled right in, I think it was chapter 11, after they conquered everything. And they didn't say how long. I'm sure historians have done some research, but I'm not a historian or an archaeologist, although I want to be one day. It just says they were at war a long time, and they had finally conquered a whole section of land. I don't think they were quite done with the conquest yet, but they were pretty close. But they were at a time where it was like they were worn out and they needed a rest. And not only that, but specifically I zeroed in on a scripture that said the land needed to rest. So, wow. I don't know about you, but when I zoom out and I apply, okay, if the land is me, and even the 5 armies and the battle of the 5 armies represent my 5 senses, you know, going back to the land, that's our embodied self. And again, conceptually, when I was reading the words rest, I immediately thought of our nervous system, which is our embodied brain, right? That's the whole communication system that tells our brain what to do with our body, is not only needing personally for fuel, but how to interact with our, multi-dimensional world here, how to move through it. And part of God's plan is rest. That we can't just be at war all the time and go hard, and that's hard for us Americans. That's a hard one, right? We are like a go big or go home, hustle, sleep is for when you're dead culture. And then we wonder why so many of us are burnt out. And then moms, especially women, keep getting things added to their plates. Women's liberation has really... it's liberated from some things and just enslaved us to others. Like, nobody took away all the other responsibilities. You just keep adding to it. Yes, you can work, and then you can come home and work more, and all the things. Although, there are a lot of men. I don't mean to not, men I think go through the something similar in their own way. But I just know, I'm a woman, so I know our perspective. But anyway, I digress. Like, to continue talking about my story, because that's how I can relate to it and apply to it, and you can hopefully hear some of my personal experiences and how I'm applying this to your own. So even take the concepts that I'm taking or talking about and apply them conceptually to your life. And a lot of my journey the last couple of years has been to do a lot of this nervous system work. Because of growing up moving a lot and never really having a home, like a stable home, not even a town. You know, I didn't move even within one town. It was always big moves to completely new places and new kid in school. Like, you can imagine what that might have done to my nervous system. But I felt like I had dealt with it intellectually, that I had processed it, I had talked about it, I had let go of it, but my body hadn't. And so I was still having a lot of things that were coming up in my nervous system that would get triggered by situations. So I have really had to personally do a lot of resting, like really tuning into my body, letting myself calm down. And I had another coach that helped me to understand that even a feeling of being home for me was to feel like I don't have a home. I know, trippy, right? Like, my nervous system was used to always being on alert, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Let's go ahead and look for the next place and get this move over with. Pattern and cycle in my life that hasn't allowed me to settle down. And so giving myself permission, not only from a conceptual, big picture point of view, but even literally. Oh, we might get to see the sunset or sunrise. Sorry. There she is. Maybe I'll stay here for a minute. But, you know, when we do this deep work, even that we need a break from. Now, that doesn't mean we revert back. So hear me loud and clear on that. You got to stay the path and stay the course. But when you feel yourself getting even overwhelmed by the process of change, or you've even had success in one area, and I'm preaching to the choir here, you like, well, it's time to go and do the next thing. Like, keep going, keep going. But you really, there's wisdom in rest. Like, to really rest, kind of look at the lay of the land, settle down in this new land. That's what, you know, Joshua had to lead his people to do. Not only for them to settle down and get rest as a people, but the land itself needed to rest from war. War was hard on the land. The bloodshed, the energy of the people, and all that it takes from the land, had to absorb that, had to renew itself from that. And we need to do that too. Otherwise, things get stored in our nervous systems and in our bodies. And then we can find ourselves in patterns of behavior that intellectually we're like, oh no, I already dealt with that. Like, that's not what's happening. Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. If it doesn't get fully processed and fully resolved and fully settled, then it will continue to bubble under the surface and within your nervous system. And they're doing more and more research on this. Y'all, I'm not making this up. They're doing more and more research on the nervous system. We've all heard the terms flight, fright, or freeze. There's a new one they've discovered called fawning, or labeled. I probably fell really into that category personally. That's where you're fawning over people, the disease to please. That's how I was trying to find my way in the world and deal with anything that was threatening. Just make people happy, be what they want. And that's exhausting. That wasn't allowing my nervous system to really fully acknowledge, that type of way of dealing with things involves a denying of self to the point that you don't process things. You repress, you avoid, you deny. And while we don't need to wallow in things, we do need to let things fully process. And of course, for me personally, a lot of what happened, and this is probably a lot of you all too, like I don't think we escape this human life without trauma and childhood trauma. And trauma doesn't mean capital T big trauma. It's little things. It's our immature brains that maybe didn't know how to handle things. Hi, Vicky. Hi. It's our brains that didn't know how to handle things. And so it had to make sense of them or deal with it in one of those ways, to fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And we don't know this, but as we mature, nobody kind of pulls us aside and says, like, we really should teach this stuff in college or even high school. Like, nobody tells us to pull back and reevaluate things from our more mature brain and look back and reflect back on childhood issues and go, oh yeah, that didn't really mean that. That didn't mean, my parents got divorced. That didn't mean that I did something wrong or I somehow caused that. Or, even with me, with the moving around a lot, like somehow I was responsible for that. Or maybe if I were a good enough girl, we wouldn't have to always keep looking for the next thing. Or what I really did was, well, since I know the move is coming, I'm not going to really let myself make friends here, or only just a couple, because then it won't hurt as much. And I'll only let them get so close to me. You kind of develop a persona of this wall, a protective wall. And that over time, when not dealt with, and then you keep doing the battles of life, will not, it will come to bite you in the butt eventually. And I think that is something that a lot of people wake up one day and they realize, and they find themselves in bad cycles of relating with themselves through overeating, over drinking, overdoing a lot of things to avoid dealing with what they need to deal with. They need to settle down, do some nervous system work, some body scan. That's where, you hear people talking about meditation and even like checking in with their bodies and settling down, and even going back and dealing with some past stuff, and to fully allow yourself to process it so that then you can, and this move on and become who you really are meant to be, and stop, finally put those things to rest, to let them settle. But even when you're going through a big change process, don't try to do too much at once, and give yourself breaks to let the change happen, right? Like most of us have probably a basic understanding of getting fit, and that the real muscle building happens when you're resting. It's not when you're actually doing the thing. It's the repeated doing of the thing that your body then says, oh, she's putting a new demand on me. He or she is putting a new demand on me. I need to create some new muscle to handle this. And the actual building of the muscle happens in the rest, in the settling down. And that is where the actual change happens, not just psychologically, but physiologically and physically. So don't ignore your body. Don't ignore your nervous system. Pay attention to it, learn from it, let it teach you, let you teach it. Our nervous system is part of our brain, and we need to respect it as such. We are like walking, talking supercomputers. And we don't treat ourselves this way. We just, you know, because we're in it every day. We don't realize how much of a walking miracle we are and how miraculous, you know, every sunrise is, and each new day. And how important rest and settling into your new identity, your new change, let them really settle into you, to make a new agreement, to become one with you. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in that cycle because it doesn't really become part of you. It's a temporary change. And we don't want that, right? Like, we want to be able to become new and like set it and forget it. Just like we had our old ways, we want to set and forget kind of our new ways. And we're really not forget, actually. I shouldn't use that word. But we want to set it and put it on a new autopilot that we're going to always appreciate and give our first fruits to God too. And so that is the importance of settling down and resting. Boy, Vicki, you're up early. Do you get up earlier than me? Or are you in like another country, in the other part of the world now? I love it. All right. That's all for now. I'm going to get some really good pictures and then put some of these thoughts down in writing and see what happens. This will be a year of getting fresh manna every day. Me in the wilderness, literally in the wilderness out here. But I might do some nervous system work myself today and do some rest. So how about you? Go settle down.